Hi everyone. In this video, let's try to create an load balancer using Terraform. So in the previous videos, as discussed, we have created virtual networks and that too in different regions, subnets, and then we have created machines as per the availability zone, and we have created application gateway. We have linked the backend pool of these machines, and then now we are going to create a load balancer and we're going to connect this machines of this backend to this load balancer. So let's do it. I'll go and I'll create a load balancer here. So for that, I'm creating a text file. Go to Google and I'll ask Terraform Azure load balancer. So in load balancer, we have the following things. So for each, so in load balancer, when we create, we have the following things like front end, and then we have a if I show in the diagram point of view, we have a front end to get all the requests to the front end, and then we have an outbound routing rule, rule, load balancing rule, which can route requests when it receives from front end to a backend, and then we have a backend pool. Then we have probe. We have to create health probe. So let's create all this in a load balancer. Now, as of now, we are seeing that in a load balancer. This is the one. I'm going to copy this here and name this as Terra-app. And I'm going to copy this and create in the resource group wherever the Terra app is there. And then I'm going to name it as LBC India. And if I go into the further more arguments which I can have, the location, everything is required. Front end IP configuration. Now I wanted a standard load balancer, so I'll choose a SKU as standard, and then we have SKU tier, which is global or regional. By default, it is going for regional, so I wanted global. So in your production, you would actually prefer this kind of things. You wanted a standard load balancer, you wanted a global SKU tier load balancer. The reason is because standard has more better, it has an SLA, whereas a basic doesn't have an SLA, and it is recommended for the production, and it can add more machines in the backend pool and all that. Now comes in terms of front-end IP configuration block, which we can see here. We can add a name zones. So I wanted this load balancer to be available across zones. The reason is the machines in the backend are placed in availability zones point of view. So here I'm going to name it as 1, comma 2, comma 3. And I don't want a public load balancer, so I'll delete the public load balancer. And then I wanted the load balancer to be in this subnet, and so I'm going to copy this and subnet ID, and I have to mention a subnet. So I'm going to create for load balancer a separate subnet. So I'm going to network.tf and I'll create a separate subnet for load balancer. So I'm going to name this as subnet LB, and LB here. So the resource group virtual network will be the same. Only thing is after 2 it is 3. So I'm going to place this LB here, and I'm going to save this, and I'm going to copy this. And now if I go back to the LB, I'm going to mention that Azure RM subnet dot Terra app subnet LB dot ID. And what else I would need? I need a private address to this machine. So when I'm going for a static allocation, then I can choose to provide what IP address I wanted for a load balancer. At this point of time, I'm going to take it as a dynamic allocation, and similarly, I'm just aligning everything exactly, and then I think this is good enough. So we are done with LB load balancer configuration here, but few more things which we need to take care is I have to configure a I configured a front end IP. Now I have to configure a backend. So even if I backend address pool, this is the one. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to mention here Terra app and Terra app here, and going to name this as backend pool. And what else resources can arguments can I have? Name, load balancer is ID is required, and I already gave that. Tunnel interface, which is not needed at this point of time. So that is it. Um, so I completed with node backend address pool. Now I'll go and create a probe. Now in terms of probe, I can say that I need this following probe. And if I go and look at what is the probe request, if I go and look at that, the protocol, I wanted it to be an HTTP one, and the port number is 80, and I'll name it as HTTP probe, and it is actually Terra app, references Terra app here, and we are good. So anything more, port is done, request path. So whenever it is HTTP or HTTPS, the protocol, I need to provide a path. So I'll mention it as slash, and I think we are good. So there is already default values for the rest. So I'm going to save this as lb.tf, and I'm going to say all files, save. So we are done with probe. Now we have to create a load balancing rule. I'm going to copy this and paste it here. So front end IP is done, backend address pool is created, and then probe is being created. Then I'm going to choose Terra-app, LB as Terra-app. And the LB rule, I'm going to keep it as HTTP backend rule, or I can make it like BN rule. And I'm going to say front end port 80 and backend port 80. The front end IP configuration name is LB C India IP, and I'm going to name the same thing here. And what else arguments I can have is load balancer configuration name and protocol I have it required for front end port, backend port, and I can mention the backend address pool IDs. So which backend address pool it has to route the request, and that is I can have multiple backend address pool IDs if it is a gateway subnet, but at this point of time this is a standard subnet. So the backend address pool ID is this one, and then I have need to provide a probe ID for this route. So whenever it is routing to this so and so backends, it will only send it to whichever instances are healthy as per probe. So ID, and then I'm going to leave rest of the things as it is. So let me check. So I'm going to save this and going to check whether everything is working properly or not. Terraform validate. I'm going to check the syntax point of view, and syntax is showing correct. So I'll do a plan. So one more thing which I wanted to mention, I want in the previous video in the last 10 minutes, 5 minutes, I mentioned that I wanted to resources to be created after some resources were created. Now similarly, I want the LB to be created after the application gateway has been created. Now for that, what I'll do is I'll mention depends on, and I'm going to mention that. So once the application gateway has been created successfully, then go ahead and create a load balancer. So everything is working out properly. A load balancer along with the so and so. So let me do a deployment. So I also have to associate network interface card to the backend address pools. So how do I go? I go to backend instance and I have to mention here Azure network load balancer address pool virtual machine association. Now, so this is the one which will use it for associating network interface card to the load balancer. So here I'm going to the backend instances and I'm going to mention here uh, Terra-app and the network interface is this one, Terra-app backend. And as there are multiple NIC cards, so I have to mention here the respective count, and I will keep this as count.ax. So there will be two network interfaces. So it will attach simultaneously to, and I have to mention here IP NIC backend NIC, and I have to go use interpolation. And this should be good. And this one, the backend address pool is, I go into LB backend address pool is LB Terra IP, and automatically it will link all this to this. So now I do a Terraform validate to check everything is working properly. So as per syntax, everything is right. I'll do Terraform plan and check whether everything is working out. So I'll do a deployment after the Terraform plan is succeeded. But as per the diagram, we have created an application gateway and now we are creating a load balancer. This is an internal load balancer. That's the reason why I don't have any front end IP for the load balancer. If you see, there is no public IP load balancer. There is no public IP. So it's a, so everything has been is working out well as runtime. So let me deploy. I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to deploy uh, the resources and check how it is working out. Doing Terraform apply hyphen auto approve. So the deployment get completed is going to take around 10 minutes. So I have encountered an error here. Uh, One thing which is saying that I didn't found the backend IP. So I have to use the same backend IP name and that is this one. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it here. I'm going to save it and I'm going to do a redeployment, and that is good. Backend 1 and 2. Now updating load balancer for the probe failed. Okay. So LBC India must only contain only load balancing rules. So I'm going to do an Terraform apply. And there is, let's see. So it's not going to do an entire deployment again. So wherever there is a failure, only those things are in there. Anyways, in the previous video, as I discussed, if you see, the front end instance will be created only after the admin instance has been created, and the backend instances will be created only after the front end instance has been created. So this is how I configured. And so first admin instance is created, then the front end instance is created, and then the backend instance is created. Why do we do this way? So it is always good practice that you don't send at a point of time you huge number of requests to Azure, so it doesn't respond properly. So for that we do it. And now if we see, uh, updating backend address full for the network interface, uh, there was an error here. That error is a cross regional load balancer, not reference a. So it is trying to say that it is can't reference a cross regional load balancer. Why that could be the situation? I have created an LB wherever there is an app, and the backend instance which I have is in the same, but it is not helping in terms of cross regional. Uh, so let me have a look at it. I'm going to pause the video. I could detect that the issue would be primarily because I created an internal load balancer. There is no private IP, so I should use the SKU tier as regional. Only global works for public IP. We choose global SKU tier when we are having a standard load balancer with a public IP. It's recommended, but otherwise that is fine. So I believe that was the reason why this issue has encountered. So I'll do again a redeployment on this. So because I changed that value, the load balancer will be recreated once again with a regional, and let's see if that is being resolved or not. So if you see, the load balancer is getting destroyed and this new load balancer is getting created. So if you see, the backend address pool and the load balancer is getting created, destroyed, and then replaced again, creating a new one. So let's wait for the deployment to complete. We could see the deployment has been completed. So let's go and validate. So if I look at all resources, and if I look at LBC India, and I have a backend address pool which is backend pool, and in that two network interface cards are being linked, which are nothing but the backend VMs, and the health probe is HTTP probe, and load balancing rule is HTTP backend rule. And if you look at it, it's routing. If you receive any 80 port request, it is routing it to backend pool, and it's TCP, and it is having health probe here, and so that is it. And now, so we have configured this one, and we look at properties of a load balancer. We can say standard SKU load balancer. So everything is working out well. And I also have discussed what is the importance of depends on. If we see the virtual, after the load application gateway has been created, only then it has created a load balancer. So the use of depends on is very important while you're creating it. And the next other point is, Now I wanted to go and validate that I wanted to admin servers have to be in a position to log into these machines and everything. For that, I have connected the VNets. But how can I log in into this admin servers when I don't have public IP? So by default in your organization, your machines will not be having any public IP addresses. Uh, Only possibilities you have to connect your network through VPN, setting up a point to site. That was an old strategy, or the current strategy which organizations are following is enabling Bastion service. So in the next coming video, we're going to enable a Bastion service in the admin servers, and we're going to validate whether we are able to log into the front end, the business logic servers, and check whether everything is working or not. So stay tuned to the next videos. Thank you.